Hi, and welcome back to Between the Benches in a new format called the Doghouse podcast. This is a podcast where we're going to be talking about all garbage teams, all bad players, and all hockey news. Basically, we're going to be doing the Razzies for hockey. My name is Austin. I'll be today's host, and I will let the panelists introduce themselves.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name's Connor. I'm actually Austin's brother. I've done a little bit of editing for some of the Between the Benches videos. I'll pass it on to one of the other hosts, JJ Williams.
Hi guys, I'm JJ Williams. You've probably seen me before on Between the Benches. I'm the guy who got more predictions right than Austin. But other than that, I'm here to talk about the Buffalo Sabres. I got the golden jersey on, one of the most beautiful jerseys in hockey. I'm going to hand it over to Jimbo.
Hey, my name is James. I'm a diehard Flames fan, so could be looking forward to the Flames being in the Doghouse, next couple of weeks here. Tonight, looking forward to roasting some Buffalo Sabres because they are the team in the Doghouse tonight, aren't they, Austin?
Yeah, today's week, the team in the Doghouse is the Buffalo Sabres. Arguably, they've been in the Doghouse this entire season. God knows when who let the dogs out soon, but it looks like they're going to be there for a lot longer. When we talk about sports in general, we like to take a thematic approach. Detroit is the Roman Empire going through its rises and falls. The duality of the Calgary Flames, are they good or are they not? So the theme I would like to present for the Buffalo Sabres today is the title of a book, and it's called Über Niederlagen zum Erfolg, which in English means Team Life Beyond Setbacks to Success. This is the book that Ralph Kruger wrote for helping German businesses be more productive, and unfortunately he was not able to bring that to the Buffalo Sabres as he started us off on that 18-game skid. So I just think we should go over what was the setbacks to success with this team. And I'll hand it off to the panel again.
Well, I mean, where do you even start where the setbacks for this team were? Do you start we could talk about the team, the players, we could talk about the coaching, we could talk about the management, we could talk about ownership. There is so many things that is wrong with this team, and we don't like. I think personally, I would like to talk about ownership because that to me is where I think most of the blame falls on. Like when you look at the owners of most sports teams, especially the successful ones, they will fund their team. They'll give adequate money for their team to operate, and they'll kind of keep a hands-off approach. Get the glory when your team wins, but hands off. Let the sports people do their sports stuff. Do you guys know who the head of hockey operations is, or the head or the president of the Sabres is?
The president of hockey operations for the Sabres is Kim Pegula, who is the wife of the owner, Terry Pegula.
Who makes those great BS hats.
Yeah, she's great at marketing, as you can tell. Her favorite thing to do besides being the president of a losing franchise is firing staff, as usually she's the one who spearheads that, with arena staff being fired, restaurant staff being fired, scouts being fired.
So wait, the president of the hockey operations is the wife of the owner?
Yep.
Yes, Kim
So
Pegula.
it's a family business.
Yeah,
That's wild. I didn't know
for
that.
a bit of history, Buffalo.
Like, does she know anything about hockey?
I don't know. I know they have a very sporty family. The daughter is a pro tennis player, but back in the early 2000s, the Sabres and the Bills were both very struggling, and it looks like they were going to move out of Buffalo. I believe the Sabres were supposed to move to Houston, and there was talk that the Bills would move to Toronto, so Toronto could have an NFL team. Local fracker, however, Terry Pegula, who owns an oil and I believe he owns tourist business as well, came in as Super Pegula and bought both franchises. So that's how he became the owner of both the Bills and the Sabres. He had a legendary quote when he bought the Sabres, which was, "We're not here to win hockey games. We're here to win the Stanley Cup."
Wait, what year did he purchase the franchises?
I want to say he was here the first year we made the playoffs before the 10-game or the 10-year drought. So 2009, I believe he bought it.
So his legacy right now has literally been 10 years of sadness plus 1 year of mediocrity.
Yeah, so
1 year away from
Terry
current
Pegula,
playoff drought record.
Under Terry Pegula, we have had been one of the bottom teams in the NHL. Before he bought the Sabres were top 4 in win percentage in the league as a franchise. So in about 45 years of being a franchise, I think the Sabres only missed the playoffs 6 times. Like, they were a tremendous team. And then just under the direction of Terry Pegula, the team has really fallen apart. As you can see, as Kim Pegula being the director of hockey operations right now, or the president of hockey operations. So there's really a lot to unpack there when it comes to, why is the owner being such an effect. But he had a great quote at the start of this year that I think really sums it up. When asked about running the Sabres, he said, it is the 3 E's. It is efficient, effective, and economic. And that has kind of been the tailcoat of the Buffalo Sabres legacy. He is so concerned about money when it comes to the Sabres. He's pinching pennies at every spot.
You guys got, what, six pro scouts or something? Compared to Toronto's
6
12?
right now.
So
They just
Toronto
laid off
has
another
13 amateur scouts, just amateur. I don't know how many pro scouts each team has, but Toronto has 13 amateur scouts, an analytics department, and 3 heads to the amateur scouting department. The Buffalo Sabres has 6 amateur scouts, including the 2 guys who lead it, who are also our analytics department. We don't have a Finland scout, we don't have a Russia scout, and we don't have a WHL scout.
You guys don't have a WHL scout?
We do not have a WHL scout at the moment. He was,
As you know,
when
no good
Jason
players come
Botterill
from
was
any of those
fired.
divisions.
Matt Barzell. Well, he only had a 5-point night tonight.
Yeah, we used to have a WHL scout. That's why we drafted Cousins from Lethbridge. But when Botterill got fired and Kevin Adams come in, he fired our WHL scout. So
That's crazy.
The one scout who found a player that actually worked.
I wonder how much that has to do with a COVID year, like just financially, especially oil and gas. I mean, I won't get into the politics of oil and gas, but it's not going well in that industry. So I wonder how much that has affected it, as well as the owners just not having a clue on things. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but when you see ex-Sabres legends coming back to celebrate their time wearing knockoff jerseys, it just looks terrible.
Man,
How do you
or did you see their names being spelled wrong too? Like,
spell
how
wrong?
do you
How do you spell a name wrong of one of your best players ever
So wait.
and have their logo
Economic.
off center?
Wait, remind me. So, sorry, what happened?
So last year, in the 50th anniversary of the Buffalo Sabres, we had a big celebration. JJ, if you want to stand up and do a little twirl while I tell this story, because he's wearing the jersey. It was this big celebration. They released that beautiful jersey, and what they did was they brought in all these old legends who are going to wear the old jerseys and come and drop pucks and sign things. But the thing about the Sabres is, I don't know if they didn't have a stock of old jerseys. If you look in the top right, I have a goat head jersey, and that has taken me, 17 years to find one. Like, they're incredibly hard to find. So they ordered knockoffs from China and gave them to the alumni. So you have guys like Dave Anderchuk, Sabres legend, and his name is spelt wrong, and the logo it's not square on the jersey. It's
not even close.
embarrassing. It's brutal. It's disrespectful. There's no excuse for it. It's almost as if Tim Pegula really wanted to buy the Bills and bring a Super Bowl to Buffalo, and just kind of bought the Sabres to go along with it to make him some money.
See, like, it drives me wild because every time I look at like the Sabres social media, they have an amazing social media presence. They're clearly putting money towards marketing. Like, they got to put some of that money towards their actual hockey operations. It doesn't make sense.
So I think like what JJ said too, I mean, it's really hard to judge teams this year because it is a COVID year. The Pegula's 2 main industries are tourism and oil, which have taken the biggest hits from COVID. So I think like there was a report that outside of hockey and football, they had to lay off all their restaurant staff, they had to close hotels, things like that. So obviously, the fact that they are trying to spend to the cap in a COVID year that's good, but it's everywhere else where the meat got trimmed, and it didn't just start with the COVID year. They were doing this last year when it came out a leaked article that they weren't going to spend any more money on Sabres, scouts and general managers because they're saving up for a super yacht that they want to build, and so all the money's going towards that. So it's crazy to me how the lack of respect they have for the Sabres name, the organization, especially when you look at the Bills. They're becoming the premier organization in football right now. They're hardworking. They love their fans. Every free agents want to go there. Everyone who plays there loves it. It's just such a great winning culture. And then you have the Sabres, who maybe in the next 3 years they'll get the same amount of wins that the Bills had last year. God only knows if we're that lucky.
I do believe the Pagulas took a hands-on approach with the Bills, but then took it off, and now you're seeing success there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe they were very hands-on at the start, and we all know the Bills weren't very good for a long time. And now they've taken their hands off. They put people in who know what they're doing, and just like that, the Bills are good. Another point I want to bring up, it was also Vancouver's 50th anniversary last year, and when they brought the Legends out, because Austin was saying, oh, they might not have had the goat head jerseys in stock. And what the Canucks did is they remade the jerseys those players wore, but in Adidas fashion. So there's clearly, if the Vancouver Canucks can clearly do that and contact Adidas or whoever and ask them to build those jerseys, why can't Buffalo?
Excellent
it looks
point to
terrible.
bring up, JJ. The Sabres tried to do that, but they kept handing that job around to contact Adidas, that there's an actual deadline you have to put in to submit for new jerseys for the year, and they missed the deadline.
So that again just shows that they either don't care or they don't know what they're doing. I mean, those are legends that are disrespected.
So where they are right now, obviously they just ended their 18 game losing streak. Yeah, 18 games.
The Philadelphia Flyers.
So at the end of last season, right, in the off season, they brought in seemingly a lot of big names, right? They brought in whole names that you typically wouldn't associate with an owner that isn't willing to pay out. So at least what it sounds like is that they're willing to pay for the players, up to the cap, but not for the staff to build a successful franchise in the long run and develop their own players.
Yeah, so The Athletic did a great article on this. Shout out to John Vogel, the Sabres beat writer for The Athletic. He's been covering them for years. But basically, it came out, and how pathetic is this going to sound when I say it, that the Pagulas felt betrayed by hockey minds in the hockey world, that everyone they brought in who was an established hockey mind had failed them. Dan Bylsma, Jason Botterill, all these guys. And so they think if you throw money at a problem, it fixes it. So everyone they've brought in the manager side are all, former staff of theirs or former players of theirs. So they're saving pennies there, and then they're just throwing money at players and hoping, something sticks to the wall.
But like they're picking guys from like teams that are trending downwards. It's not like they're getting the hockey minds of something that's been great, like a system that's been working, right? Like they're Dan Bylsma, like he was already on his way out.
They got Bylsma after he won a cup in Pittsburgh, so I can't fault him for that signing.
Yeah, but that was like 2 to 3 years after, and Bylsma's Pittsburgh Penguins weren't nearly as good.
Oh, he was brutal, absolutely. And then you look at like their current signing as GM. They fired Jason Botterill because Botterill butchered the team, but at the same time they were so hands-on with Botterill, they never actually let him run the team the way he wanted. So they fire a guy for not doing what they wanted after he did what they wanted. And they bring in Kevin Adams, who for the past 3 years has been the general manager of the Harbor Center, which is the arena area in Buffalo. So he's never been a general manager, never been a scout. He was an assistant coach 10 years ago. He was a great player when he played. He won a cup, but what experience does he have running a team? And I can't judge the guy yet. He just got the job. He got put into an impossible position. But it's just decisions like that show they really don't care. They're not trying their hardest.
Well, they're not putting the money where they need to put the money, right? Like arguably, instead of bringing in like a guy like Taylor Hall for $8 million, even though it's a 1-year contract, you could have used cap to get better depth throughout your team, and that would have probably served the Sabres way better. I think. Like, what do you?
Well, exactly. That's a great point, Connor. I was going to say that too, because they, some could argue that they did put their money where their mouth was in the off season, but it's not working, right? And at the end of the day, what's happened this season, it doesn't matter, how many scouts you have. On paper, they had a contending team this year, right? But it just hasn't worked out.
I give a lot of slack to the Buffalo Sabres this season, just because of some of the terrible conditions. Were they going to make the playoffs before if everything went smoothly? God only knows, right? But you have Eichel come in with a lot of injuries. He's not playing like himself. He gets smoked. He's out for the season. You have Ristolainen and McCabe playing like the top two pair in the league. They're killing it. McCabe gets a season-ending injury. He may never play hockey again at his age. Ristolainen gets COVID and he writes an article about how he feels like he was going to die some nights. He hasn't been the same since he got back to COVID. Bryson comes in. He's looking amazing. He gets hurt, comes back. Thankfully, he's still playing well. Will Borgen comes in. He's looking like the answer to the Sabres' defensive problem. He breaks his arm. He's out for the season. Allmark's been playing like a Vezina caliber goalie. He gets knocked out for a month. Carter Hutton gets knocked out. We're down to 2 AHL goalies, one who hasn't played since 2016-17, and the other one who hasn't played an NHL game ever was playing in the ECHL last year. You make all these strong depth signings, and then your team just gets decimated by injuries. And then you have not one time, but twice when you tell the NHL you don't feel comfortable playing a game due to COVID risks. And both times they go ahead, and both times someone gets COVID from it. And the team just, after that COVID break, they just haven't looked the same. A lot of guys just look like they don't have the lungs anymore for it. And even every single time we get a bright spot this season, it just gets destroyed. Curtis Lazar was turning it on, and he's one of our hard and hustle guys, and he might be out for the season now too.
It's just a tale of tragedies in Buffalo. I'm going to defend signing Taylor Hall just for the fact that Taylor Hall played really well under Ralph Kruger back in Edmonton. So they saw success there and went, maybe we can recreate that. And now he's playing with Eichel. He didn't exactly have that in Edmonton. I know he had McDavid sort of near the end of Edmonton, but that was when Edmonton was also in the dumps. So I think they were trying to recreate that magic, but I don't. The thing I would disagree with is they already had Jeff Skinner, who didn't play very well last year, but that's because they didn't play him with Eichel as much. They started playing, Olofsson. They started playing Olofsson there, who played very well. The issue is they've given all this money to Skinner now for till the end of time. He is signed past 2026, 27, and now they're not giving him the opportunity to succeed with Eichel, which he did the first year. So then they sign another guy to replace him for only 1 year, who probably won't stay this year now, but might not have even stayed anyway. And now they're paying Skinner all this money to play on the third or fourth line with a decimated squad. So I just think that's poor management overall. But I could see where they were kind of going with that Taylor Hall signing originally. But they had too many wingers.
Were they maybe chasing skill a little more than leadership? Because like I look at the roster and who are the real leaders on the team? Like I know Eichel's the captain, but is he really leadership quality? I mean, every season he comes out and complains how he's tired of losing, and he calls out his whole team, but nothing actually changes. Like what's going on in the locker room there? What's the feel in there?
I mean, even then, right? You bring in like a very classic, strong leadership guy in Eric Stahl, who's been a captain for years in the NHL.
They decimated him this season.
Right? Like he led a team to a Stanley Cup. You can't forget that. And if he can't really like do much with his team, right? It's
like toxic culture in there or something, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just
yeah, but like
worse.
When it comes to leadership, it's a fine line of you want to have leaders and you want to have veterans on your team, but they have to be able to play. Like, Kyle Okposo is an immense leadership voice in the dressing room. He's respected. He wears the A every year, but like Buddy can't play anymore. He doesn't have it. And so that's their issue is they can't find these veterans, and every time they swing out, everyone was excited when they heard Eric Stahl coming into Buffalo because he's, one of the most respected guys in the league. And, he's just always been, with the fun dad in the dressing room. But, like, holy crap, did he suck this year. I think he was one of the few guys who just night out did not try.
Do you think that Eichel was the right choice for the captain? Like, I just can't help but feel like they picked him because he was the most skilled guy.
It really comes down to, different teams value different things in captains. I think Eichel was a great pick in that he has that compete level. All he cares about is winning. And some people might not like their captain coming out and saying that. I think it's great. I'd rather have a captain come out and be pissed off and not satisfied with where our team is than be complacent. I think he was definitely too young when he got picked to be captain, but that's just kind of me being a bit old school. I prefer my captains to be on the older side and more leadership quality. But you gotta surround him with some guys to help show him the ropes, right? You can't just let him drown. And Kyle Okposo is not the solution to that issue.
Yeah, I mean, just in talking about leadership with like superstars, right? Like Mary Lemieux came back to help Sidney Crosby learn the ropes of leadership, and that really paid dividends. Eichel really didn't have that, and I mean, you mentioned like it's good to have a guy who voices his displeasure, but it almost seems like there's a lack of intensity there. Like just watching and listening, it doesn't sound like he's intense and wants to do everything he can to get his team fired
Does he
back
have the
up.
respect, to say that sort of stuff? Like, are people actually responding to it? Yeah, I agree. I think it's great he's saying it, but like, are people responding? Because this season makes it seem like they're not.
I mean,
To me, it doesn't seem like
been saying it for years. He's been saying the exact same thing for years. We saw it with Ryan O'Reilly too when he played in Buffalo. He lost his love for hockey. Then he went and won a Stanley Cup with St. Louis. It's
Robin
almost getting
Lehner,
to the
too.
Robin Lehner. It's almost getting to the point now where you're asking these questions to yourself, going, "Yeah, we have these really good players, but do we need a locker room reset? Do we have to trade out pretty much everything and fire sale the team because it's not working?" People don't want to be here, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's created this toxic locker room where no one believes in themselves. And you see it all the time with teams where it's not going their way, the puck hits the post, they miss, they get down on themselves. And when you go on an 18-game losing streak, that's only more fuel to the fire. If it was a good team like the Pittsburgh Penguins or Washington or teams that have been successful in the past that had this huge losing streak, it would still be devastating for them. But I think the patience in Buffalo is running out, especially for players who have played their entire career in Buffalo, who have never made the playoffs. I mean, Sam Reinhart's 25, Ristolainen's 26. They must be tired of losing. They've never even been a competitive team.
What do the fans say after 10 years of pain and rebuild when, after 10 years you come out and say, yeah, sorry, we're blowing up the team and we're starting all over again?
Yeah, like how can you justify that as management and as ownership to be like, yeah, we're blowing up? Like, as a fan base, do you trust them to fix what they have with what they have, or do you be like, yeah, okay, I trust them to blow up the team? Honestly, you can't really trust them with both either. Like,
because you look
neither
back
have worked.
At the Colorado Avalanche, 2016, 2017, they were terrible, but they had a great team, and they go on the next season, they make the playoffs, and they really make a run of it. And that was, I think, a case of more players just not clicking, right? But it doesn't feel the same, I don't know if it's you can't keep the same roster next season and expect that to happen.
Colorado also got a king's ransom for Duchesne, which has really helped them. I mean, look at their team now and how many of those players who are really good came from that deal. And their drafting's just been phenomenal. And not every team has that drafting luck. I mean, Austin was saying right before this call that Casey Milstad's starting to play better now. But when he got drafted, we were all like, oh, wow, watch out. Buffalo's going to be amazing. And it just hasn't gone that way, unfortunately.
Yeah, but is that... Like, is that like but is that on Middlestat alone, like poor drafting, or is that just the development?
It could be both. I don't know. I mean, we just talked about them having barely any scouts and not having scouts in other areas. Maybe that plays a part in it. And yes, the fans have probably lost faith in the team, or the owners, sorry, and the team, and they don't want to see another rebuild. But I just don't see a solution right now that is working. They have to do something. And Ristolainen only is a year after this one, so they're going to have to make a decision with him. He's a UFA. Montour's done at the end of this year as well. They have a lot of players expiring. Hall's probably going to leave. So if you take all those players who are leaving anyway, who are probably not going to be there, and you just take what's left, is that a winning team? I don't think so. And when you have $15 million locked up in Okposo and Skinner for a few years, that really hurts as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you could do the Colorado comparison too, Colorado never had one of those anchor contracts that is going to be impossible to move. The highest paid guy in Colorado
There's some sweet
now makes
contracts on
over
there.
8 million, but like McKinnon signed for less than 7 million. That is a hell of a deal. Like Eichel's contract, I will say, is worth the money. Like comparable to when the time signs, perfect contract. But like you can't just give out contracts that big, because then guys on your team, when they need to be re-signed, are going to ask for the same thing.
You got to keep in mind, though, with the McKinnon contract, the reason why he signed so cheap was because they walked him straight to free agency. He's going to be a free agent straight in his prime. Will he stay? Probably, because Colorado is one of the best teams in the league. But that's a risk you always are going to take. I mean, if you look at Toronto, Austin Matthews is probably going to go to Arizona in his prime at 26. Like,
Hope so.
right? And they didn't even get a discount on him either. So, you got to really be careful with the contracts. The issue, too, that Buffalo has that they can't benefit from that Colorado did is, we've been saying this over and over. It's a COVID year, right? The market isn't the same. Teams are so penny pitching, and draft picks, I was wondering which way they're going to go value-wise. Apparently, they've gone through the roof. Last year, Taylor Hall got a king's ransom when he was struggling with New Jersey. He got a first. He got, I think it was 3 prospects. And this year they're saying they'd be lucky if they got a second for him. Like,
Well, yeah.
very few.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a hard year for the market. You're never going to see a trade like the Duchesne one where they get a non-protected first. Like, it's just with COVID and the cap staying flat for the next 4 years, teams that are going to blow it up are going to have a really tough time getting value for the players. Like, at this point in time, there's no trade you can make for Jack Eichel where you'll get a return that's even close to the value you should get.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
right. But then I guess talking COVID and just I guess going more recently to the Sabres with like their recent skid, is that really like how much of that is a COVID thing versus just how poorly have been playing together?
Like, so yeah, Austin, you say it's a lot of injuries and physical stuff. So they get a long off season this year. They finish early or whatever, and no playoffs, so they get to rest up for 4 months. So what are we looking at Buffalo Sabres 2021 2022?
That's really hard to say because this year, like I said, I think the injuries played a big part in it. At the start of the season, they definitely looked a little rusty because they haven't been playing for like 9 months, was it, or something, and you're playing against in the East Division, except all but one team didn't make the playoffs or got to play in the play-in round. So you're playing all these guys who have been playing, who are in the bubble. And before we got COVID from New Jersey, I think our record was 6-4-2, which that's not a great record, but they're not out of it, right? I think they're sitting around 5th or 6th. They're trying to compete. And then you get COVID, and then we go on this huge skid. So the question really comes down to, for the 2021-2022 Sabres, is do you blow it up or do you hold on? Because
Are we talking about them this time next year?
that really depends on how Kevin Adams wants to take this team. He's got one of the best, if you look at it in a bubble, the best building blocks for a young core. You got a number 1 franchise center. You got an extremely young defenseman. You got a very big, fast young guy in Dylan Cousins. Reinhardt is still young. Olofsson's still young. You have the pieces that you just need to add around.
Good goalie, too.
Good goalie. Allmark's great.
Been great. Yep.
Literally
Pekka
stealing
Konen's
games.
going to look really good in 2 years when he comes up to the NHL, right? And for the first time in a long time, a couple of their later round picks are actually starting to look, pretty good. Linus Wyback in college was doing really well this year, and he might sign. And he was a 7th round pick, right? And Olofsson was a 7th round pick too. So you got a lot of good things to be happy about, but at the same time, you got a lot of money locked up, like JJ said. You got $15 million in Okposo and Skinner. And Skinner's a great player, and he loves playing in Buffalo, but they just have not been able to utilize him right properly again. And at what point do you shoot his game?
How are you going to attract players in the off season though? Like, who wants to go to a team that tied, for the what is it, the most recent losing streak in the whole millennia? Like, who wants to go to that
They
team?
tied Pittsburgh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We tied Pittsburgh from 2004.
Not
And
just
just like
that,
Pittsburgh-
they have their cap locked up. They can't even make big signings.
So they can't even
And
make
Skinner
big
signed
signings.
longer than Eichel.
And even so, they can't make big signings because they've got a lot of cap locked up. But even the big signings won't even want to go there. So
But like not necessarily they need big signings, right? Like Taylor Hall, like he's expires this year. There's no way Taylor Hall can command a contract over $5 million or per year on the open market. There's no way, and the Sabres won't be able to sign him for, or shouldn't sign him for anything above that, right? Like that's $8 million off their cap hit. They actually surprisingly could have more cap hit room than we're giving them credit for.
But then
So
back
that's
to the
also another
owners.
thing.
Oh, sorry. Back to the owners and penny pinching is when that contract's gone. Are they going to even want to sign players and go back up to being a team that's up against the
Well,
cap?
no one's gonna want to go there, so they got no
Exactly.
option.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, but I'm pretty sure the owners were very hands-on in the Skinner contract.
They were. So they were hands-on
Exactly.
in both the Skinner and the Eichel contract. Jason Botterill didn't want to sign either of them long-term. So before he came to Buffalo, and the reason why I was so excited to get him was he was the Pittsburgh Penguins capologist, the cap wizard. So he was the reason why Pittsburgh was able to compete for as long as they did, because he was the one getting guys under good contracts. And his rule of thumb is you do not sign anyone longer for 5 years, and you keep the contracts cheaper, right? You keep it cheap, you keep it short. There's no injury to that. But the issue with the Skinner contract, and one that I think we're going to see again with Taylor Hall, is you have a fan base that is so starved for playoffs and so starved for good teams, that when you have a guy like Jeff Skinner come in and he scores 40 goals and his chemistry with Eichel's through the roof, right, you can't just let him walk in free agency, right? There was news that came out that Jim Benning wanted to give him, I think it was $10 million. He was like, if he hits the market, I'm going to throw $10 million at him right away. This was, I know, pre-COVID time when we talk about contracts. It's like, wow, teams were just willing to splash money. So if you're the Sabres, imagine how bad the optic looks if you finally get a guy who can compete at an all-star level and you just let him walk for nothing. So they're saying, lock him up, $9 million 8 years, just get it done. And little things like that, where instead of making the right decision to make a competing team, you're doing the thing for optics. It's just it destroys the fan base, right? Is the right thing to do blow it up, start over, build around the core we have? Probably. But how are you going to sell that to the owners who are throwing money at this team? How are you going to sell that to the fans that, hey, 2014 we said we are going to blow it up. 2015 we blew it up. 2018 we blew it up a bit. Okay, we're going to do it again now. Right? At what point do you go, enough is enough, we have to win games? So it's going to, Kevin Adams has the impossible job, and I think within this next week, I know Darren Ferris, Taylor Hall's agent, said he's still interested in signing in Buffalo. So
He said that
if he
when?
signs an extension. What?
When did he say that?
I think like a week ago.
Really?
Because
they asked him after
listen to offers.
Yeah, so they asked him after Kruger got fired, and he said, I'm still interested, I still like the group of guys. And then, the reporter asked...
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, you forget
I remember the headline.
Franchise.
Well, I mean,
That's
if
why he
he's
left Arizona.
saying, if a UFA is saying that, it might be just to drive up prices, so it's kind of tough to say. But also, just to Buffalo's credit, this offseason they have $34 million to play with in cap space.
Yeah. And as shitty as this does say, because everyone has played bad, extensions will be cheaper. So that's huge too. But
yeah, with Dallin especially.
I mean, Dallin's had a rough year, so his extension will be cheap. Whether or not you sign him long term or short term, that's the big question.
Oh, he's got to be going short. He's got to bet on himself for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. But Taylor Hall, whether or not he signs an extension the next week, is going to kind of be the key in pointing the franchise in the right direction. I love Hall. He's a great player. He's a great guy. But at what point, how much does he actually add benefit to this team? If you throw $6 million at Hall for the next couple of years, Hall's a stud. But you have a Lofton on the left side, who cheaper value provides goals. You have Skinner, who costs a lot. You're going to be paying him a lot of money, and he does goals. Do you need that triple punch on the left wing when there's other areas that you need to fix? And back to what James said about, no one's going to want to go to Buffalo. It's just we're in the situation where Pittsburgh was, where no one wanted to go to Pittsburgh in the early 2000s. But so you're just going to have to draft and pray to God you can build this team from the ground up. But I think the clock's running a little too quick for them, and I don't know if they have the patience to wait for guys like Jack Quinn, Ryan Johnson, Mateus Samuelsson to make the roster.
And if we're talking about drafting your way out of this is one of the worst years. Most junior leagues aren't playing or are going to play reduced schedules. So it's going to be a lot of busts and players who turn out to be fantastic. So if the Sabres are going to have to try to get a little lucky there, but we'll see how that goes. But I think coaching is going to be a huge thing. They have to get a good coach this offseason. You can't hire a guy who was over in England managing Southampton football team. I know he was good in the past, Ralph Kruger, but you need to find a good coach. They have a good goalie coach in Mike Bales, ex-Ohio State goalie coach. He also helped coach the Penguins when they were successful. And their one goalie's been pretty successful, so that's working out. But you need a head coach. You can't have a coach putting a $9 million guy who's signed till the end of time, who played really well with Eichel, not playing with Eichel. I know Olofsson did very well that year and was great with Eichel the next year, but you got to set up Skinner for success. Putting him on the third and fourth line is just going to kill his
I
confidence,
mean,
and
you
he's not
have
going to
to.
score well.
It's mandatory. He can't just keep going the way he is, at that money. Like,
Not only that, you just can't have coaches, beefing with the players. Like Kruger just immediately coming and putting Skinner in his doghouse and just making like little petty comments about him. Like when Skinner finally broke his droughtless goal streak this year, Kruger made a really sassy comment, like, for someone who's only ever measured his career in goals, I guess that's a big moment for him. But you don't need crap like that in a dressing room. Like that's a setback to success by Ralph
What's
Kruger's
that going
team.
to do? What's that
Like-
going to do? Yeah, he should read his own book.
Like the Sabres have so many like interesting pieces when it comes for coaching. Don Granato, our interim coach right now, he was running our power play, which was like top 5 in the league before all the injuries hit. He's good with the power play. You got to keep him there, right? You got Dan Girardi, who's helping with player development, who's he was a great defenseman in the NHL, and he was undrafted. He knows what it takes to work all the way to the top. So you got these small little good pieces, but it doesn't matter if you don't have a good head coach. And we have the perfect opportunity ahead of us. Bruce Boudreau just straight up came out and said, I would love to coach the Buffalo Sabres. He used to play against them a lot when they were good. He's from the area in Toronto. And yeah, I know he's never won a cup, but he knows how to make a playoff team. He knows winning culture. And he just knows how to work guys. You look at those Minnesota teams and we talk about how boring they were, but he turned a bunch of, nobodies into a team that could play well. So you got this perfect golden egg sitting there, and it just really comes down to Kevin Adams if he's willing to take it.
Honestly, it's not just about like Bruce Boudreau. Buffalo needs to shell out for like a world class coach. I feel like a lot of teams don't understand the importance of a coach, and they really need to push for one that is either fits the scheme of their players or pushes them to what they can actually achieve. And that's something I don't think like Bruce Boudreau could do, but I don't think he fits the kind of scheme that Buffalo needs. Like he had, I don't know. I don't see Bruce Boudreau as the kind of guy that's going to fix this issue.
I think they just need someone to come in and change the culture, right? Because I do agree with you, Austin. Like, I think there's a really good foundation there, and I feel like this could have gone way differently. But here we are, right? Like, just on the end of a 18-game losing streak. But obviously, you got Eichel. Most teams don't have, a player of that caliber to build around. So if he leaves, that's going to be a huge blow. Like, you have to keep him. Whether you can keep him motivated, that's another, situation. But I guess we'll see what happens.
And I think, though, with Bruce, the joke always with him was, with Minnesota especially, that they were always this team that would just make the playoffs and then not do very well. I think Buffalo fans
Calgary
would kill
Flames.
for that right now. They'd be so happy just to make the playoffs, just to be competitive, to be back there. They just need someone who can get them there and motivate them. And I know earlier I was saying maybe they need to blow it up. Another option they could look at is just retooling the teams. Maybe trading out some of their top players who have expiring contracts in a year or two and getting in other quality players. Obviously, right now is not the best time to trade them. So hopefully next year you can start off a little better, see if the culture changes. And if it doesn't, maybe trade Aristo for another good defenseman. Try something, because right now it's not working.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Sabres just want to make the playoffs so bad because unlike those Minnesota teams, we have so many intriguing pieces that I just know if they got into the playoffs, they could do something, right? Jack Eichel would be a monster in the playoffs. And when you watch Ristolainen play, you're like, this dude looks like a playoff warrior, a big, mean defenseman who can score. and they haven't been given the chance to get there, right? So we just want to get our foot in the door, and that's the issue. Do we tear it down or do we retool? At least, like, the only bright side to this is it does look like Kevin Adams has full autonomy with the team. It looks like the Pagulas are taking a step back, and right now he's pretty much overwhelmed with all the trades, all the injuries. So he's looking to get not one but two assistant general managers, which I can't even remember the last time the Sabres had an assistant general manager. We're supposed to be getting Jason Carmanos from the Carolina Hurricanes. He's an executive, and he's done great work there. And apparently, and this is a rumor I heard, and I don't know how much validity it is to it, but Jim Rutherford, the former Penguins GM, might come in too. And yeah, I know Penguins fans will laugh their ass off if that happens because he was pretty terrible there at the end. But if you add someone who has been such a founder, like future Hall of Famer in hockey for GMs, right, having that presence in the office, that's already the start of a winning culture. And I remember when Botterill was here, he was so focused on building from the ground up. You know, he turned the Rochester Americans into a really good playoff team, a really great winning culture. And so when you have the young guys come up from there, they have that mindset. So if you can do that to the front office too, it's only a matter of time until you can get that in the dressing room. But I do think, you know, it's going to be a question in Kevin Adams' mind. Can it happen with this core, or are we going to have to change it for that winning culture to come?
Well, I don't think you guys are going to be able to change this core anytime soon. Like, with all the cap restrictions and all that, as well as, like, given that it is a COVID year, it's tough to actually gauge how good teams are. Like, you look a lot around the league. You look at, like, the North Division, for instance, right? Like, man, Toronto and Edmonton, they're Winnipeg as well. They're all sure, like, cap or cup locks, right? But it's really tough to say, especially when any given time you could miss games and you're only playing a handful of teams multiple times over and over and over again, right? Oh.
Yeah, they are in the division of death after all. I'm not going to give them too much of an excuse with that because 7 wins is just unacceptable. But you do have a point there. If you're playing the same teams over and over again and you just don't play well against them, maybe that hurts. So maybe next year, if things go back to normal, they can start off a little better and get another high draft pick who can maybe play, and hopefully things change. I just think with the amount of players who've been on that team and their entire career has just been misery, it's going to be hard to change their mindset when on that team. Sometimes you do just need a change of scenery to wake up.
Yeah, and again, the difficulty just comes straight back to, you know, how, like, you don't want to undersell these guys. If you're going to finally trade Ristolainen, you want to get full value for Ristolainen. You don't want to be selling short. You're going to want to get those draft picks, those prospects, those players. And then I think you got to spend a bit of money on some veterans, you know. Dahlin is dying to have, you know, an older defenseman just, you know, help be that guiding tomb. Because, you know, he's a young kid. He came in the league as an 18-year-old, and he's already having to play with the younger guys like Yoki Haru and be their mentor in the league. So that's, you know, that's such an impossible role to ask of a 20-year-old.
Right. And I think that totally circles back to what I was saying before about the leadership thing, right? Like maybe they didn't bring in enough leadership when these young prospects were coming up. And now you're in this weird situation where the prospects are now the leaders, quote unquote, to the younger guys, but they never got taught how to be a leader themselves, right? So maybe it goes back.
All they know is losing, yeah.
And that's definitely, that's an issue that at least on another positive, you know, from what I've seen about Kevin Adams, is that's an issue he recognized, right? You know, Eichel, when he came in the league, he had nobody. You know, he had Matt Molson, who got sent down, right? But then you look at now this year with Dylan Cousins, they placed his locker right between Jack Eichel's and Eric Stahl's. So there's very, like, this clear intent of, you know, surrounding these new young guys with, you know, this veteran mindset and showing them what it means to be, you know, a winner. But you got to act a bit quicker, right? This year we got to sign, you know, and as much as everyone hates the guy, even Drew Doughty came out, I think it was 2 years ago, when they asked him, they're like, you know, this rookie kid, Dahlin's lighting the league up. And he's like, yep, this kid's going to be one of the greatest defensemen, but he needs an older presence beside him. And he was like, when I was a rookie, I had an older defenseman with me, and he showed me the ropes, and I'll never, you know, forget the lessons I got. And if you get that for Dahlin, he'll be better than anyone will expect. And they just haven't found that for him.
So is it too late? Are they, you know, are they getting too old?
Oh God, not with Dahlin. Like
how old is
just
Deadly
look.
still that old?
Well, Dahlin's like he maybe is turning 20 this year. He's very very young,
He's
and
turning
like
21.
Eichel's
tur
23.
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, like Dahlin's turning 21, Eichel's 23. You just need the guy who's probably late 20s, early 30s that it can play hockey and has been around the league. They don't need to be like, hey, the big leadership necessarily mentor, in my opinion. They just have to be a guy who's been around and has as a character guy, right? Like think about like what Chris Tanev has done for Noah Hannafin's career, right? Like Noah Hannafin was getting pretty close to being called a write-off in Calgary, and now he's one of the best players on the team. And that's exactly what like Donnelly needs. He just needs a steady guy who has character.
And tonight, it probably hasn't been like this all year. I know teams always change their defensive partners up, but tonight he played with someone younger than him. He played with Yoki Haru. So there's no mentorship there. He's probably teaching Yoki Haru things. Or like Drew Doughty said, he had that old guy next to him. Well, Dallin's teaching someone younger. So there's no leadership being signed there at all. And if you look at pretty much all their lines here, which I'm looking at, I know they're decimated with injuries right now, but back to what James was saying. There's no leaders. There's no leaders on this team. It's all people who've just been losing and aren't
So
very old or good.
so when things started getting bad, I guess with injuries this season, COVID hit, it just kept spiraling. There was no one to stop it, right? It just seems like it was a positive feedback loop, and it just when do you hit rock bottom? And maybe they hit rock bottom 2 games ago when they just before they got their first win, but I guess we'll see, right? Like it just seems like no one knows, because there's no one to stop it, no one to stop you from
No.
going further deeper into the doghouse, right? So
No coaching leadership, no player leadership.
And again, it was one of those years where it was like we weren't even allowed to have positives. Like I remember, McCabe was having an insane season. They're like, wow, he's actually turned his career around, and then bam, he's out for the season. So then we call up Will Borgen. They're like, holy crap, this kid's ready to play. Bam, out for the season, right? Lazar, oh hey, this guy's got a lot of heart, out for the season. At what
Gergensen.
point do we say, what do we have? When can we have something nice in this situation?
Well, if Buffalo wants something nice in this situation, they better make sure they sign Allmark because he is a UFA at the end of this year.
oh, is he? I could see him going to a better team and just lighting it up, right? Like he's been great.
So they better make sure they sign him or know if he's coming back, because if he walks, Buffalo is in even
That's
more
what comes back
trouble
to the
than they
culture, right?
already are. And
Yeah, like
how
Buffalo has
bad
what
is that?
one win without Allmark this year. Like
Yep.
this man is literally stealing.
That man was out
games
for
this.
so many games in my fantasy. I was just dying. Like he was on IF, I swear, for 3 weeks, and they only got one. That's insane, man. Wow.
Allmark, Vesner caliber goalie. I'm telling you, he's gonna win one in his future, and he's young too.
They
So
look
I know
Buffalo better
he,
make sure they sign him soon.
Well, Colorado has their own goaltending issues. They have Grubauer that they need to resign.
I know they traded for Jonas Johansson, who's probably one of the worst goalies I've ever watched, and then we're surprised when he let in 3 goals on 4 shots.
And the best part is you let in one of the best goals I've seen in a shootout to Dvorak against the Coyotes, because he hasn't been watching the Coyotes, and Dvorak has one move. And the commentators were talking about that. They went, we know which move Dvorak's doing, and the goalie was caught with his pants down, had no research done on the Coyotes.
And again, talking back to that veteran leadership, like when you look at the free agents coming up this year, there are a lot of veterans coming up. Hajarmelson, Dougie Hamilton, who's not much of a veteran, but he's an amazing player. Goligoski, and it's like, how much money are you gonna have to throw at these guys so they actually come to Buffalo?
Well, yeah.
And at what point is that even worth it, right? Is it worth paying Goligoski $5 million just so he can mentor Dowlene and be hot garbage every night?
He won't get that much. He's been pretty
Arguably, don't
bad
go
this
for
year.
someone like Goligoski or Yarmelson. Maybe someone like Mark, or I think it's Dennis or Mark Savard, who's available.
Eric
Well,
Goodbranson is a
30
free
years.
agent.
Proven leader of losing teams. Bring him in. Bring him in. I
He would be
watched
the
him in
toughest guy on
Vancouver.
that
Bring him in.
roster. And I think that's the one thing the Sabres fans are upset about is, everyone loves a tough guy on a team, even if they don't contribute much, and especially on losing teams. Ottawa fans have such a blast watching their games, even though they suck, because you got, Watson, Goodbranson, Kachuk, like you got all these maniacs just running around, and they're not good at hockey, but they're hitting guys and they're energizing and they're working their asses off, and Buffalo doesn't have any fight in them. You got Ristolainen, but he's eating up so many minutes playing. You can't have him fighting. Who else is going to get in a fight? Colin Miller. I know Cousins got in a fight and he beat the brakes off Lindgren, and that was great to see. Bumped the mouth guard out of him, but he's a kid. You can't expect him to get fighting, especially now with his concussion issues. You got to be really careful with that crowd.
You don't want someone that skillful being one of the only players willing to stand up for people on a losing team, especially.
Yeah.
You don't, you don't see McDavid going out fighting every game.
Stand up for his players. With the elbow.
Yeah, just an elbow, and he'll just get fined. That's okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like, arguably, this is a spot where Kyle Poza, although small, could kind of just give that energy. He just go out there, hit, stand up for guys. He's not a good guy, but like
out of all the players to call on, that was the worst one.
Yeah,
he was in the hospital for so long with a concussion.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, he's injury destroyed. He cannot fight.
Anyway.
Sorry, what was that, James?
Sorry, who was that?
Pozo.
I did not know about his concussions.
Oof. It was a situation where he got a concussion and they gave him medication for it in the hospital, and he had such an adverse effect. He was out for the year, and he got schizophrenic for a bit from it, or I think it was manic depressive, where he didn't remember his wife's name. He was threatening to fight doctors. It was just they're wondering if he was gonna die in hospital. And it was a horrifying moment. Honestly, this guy should probably retire at this point in career for his health. But
same with
he's definitely not the guy we want out there fighting.
Well, if he retires, is that even a cap relief for the Sabres, or is it going to be like a Vancouver Roberto Luongo?
No,
situation?
He can be put on LTIR.
The new CBA rectified cap recapture penalties anyway, so he'd be fine.
They realize just punishing the Canucks always isn't gonna fly. No, but they could easily get away with the amount of injuries he's had. It would not be a hard argument. In fact,
I would hope that they put him on LTIR because if a player just directly retires, he doesn't get insurance money anymore. But if he's on LTIR, the team still has to pay for his treatment. So I hope the team would do the right thing and offer to still pay for his medical. And I know Buffalo was, they're pretty good in that regard at least. They do that one thing right.
We'll see if they do while penny pinching during COVID, though.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like they've done that great under Kim Pagula for that kind of stuff. They kind of just, the moment the team or a player doesn't bring them more money, meh.
I would disagree. I've at least what I've seen from the organization the past couple of years, we may not be a great hockey team, but we do try our best to look out for the players. I remember they did give a lot of support to Robin Lehner when he was going through his issues with his wife and his child. And I know they were giving a lot of issues to other players when they had personal issues. And it's just, they try their best to at least help the guys, even if they can't get them wins on the ice.
Yeah, but that's not my point. It's those guys were making the money at the time. The moment those guys don't make you money, it seems like the Pugulas kind of just see them as expendable. Right? Alumni is nice and all, but it's only good for 1 night a year.
He doesn't agree.
I'm not buying it. I've seen us give support to guys who make us no money so many times. Matt Molson was hot garbage, and we still did everything we could so he could have a good off-season retirement, even moving him to the Hershey Bears while paying him $4 million. So.
Well, he kind of had to. There's no getting out of that.
Yeah, well, because he left our organization to play for another one, but we just bit the bullet on it just so he could play for his family.
I mean, they're very charitable. They signed Cody Eakin for 2 years at way too much, so they do have a little bit of gold in
They have a good soft side, If you can't win games, you better. But just it's just brutal all around, and I honestly don't know whether or not to blow it up at this point. Not this year's draft. This year's draft's kind of a crapshoot, but I know the 2022 and 2023 drafts both have great players in them. And so I'm wondering, it has to be in Kevin Adams' mind if he's looking at those two kids and thinking whether or not to try to base his franchise around them.
I think
Are,
next year's your last shot. You have too many UFAs. Just looking at it now. Too many UFAs.
honestly, I think you guys just got to like retool. Keep your like on everyone 23 and under. Sure, keep everyone over. Sell them for the highest price, and probably not during this year or during the offseason. You'd have to wait until next year when we know if the cap's actually going to be raised. We can see what teams are going to be able to spend.
I'm
That's
pretty
the
sure it's
issue too. Is
law.
the cap staying flat for 4 more years?
COVID strikes again. The reason I'm saying next year is their last chance, you don't sell low. Business 101. You can't sell players coming off of an 18-game losing streak if they're still signed. If you have to get rid of them, you have to. But if they're still signed, that's not the time to trade them. A lot of them are still good players, just on a bad team that's had its misfortunes this year. You have to see if the team can connect next year, but you got to be ready to pull the plug as soon as possible if it's not going well, because we've seen it before where they start very well and then it all falls apart. And next year's judgment year with all the UFAs, so it's going to be hard. If they don't get Allmark, though, I think that sets it right there. If they don't have Allmark, they're in trouble. I know they have goalie prospects, but you don't really want to throw them into a starting position when they've never played backup or not many games as backup, especially when the team's doing as bad as it is. That's not going to help them develop into good goalies.
Yeah, you never want to rush a goalie to a stage above where they're ready, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this will always be an issue for every team is they see a need for being better goaltending, they'll rush their goalies, and then they become stagnant, they grow, they get injuries, they get lit up, they lose their confidence, right? So I mean, yeah, it really does come down to if you guys can sign Allmark, then you at least have one more year to be like, okay, we can compete with this core, or potentially. But if you guys lose Allmark, you basically have to blow it up. There's no way this team can compete without that kind of goaltending.
Or do we want to read some tweets?
Absolutely.
Oh my god, yeah, I would love to see this.
Okay, so we're going to move on into our next segment here. So we're going to read some fan reactions to the Buffalo Sabres' unfortunate loss streak here, which just finished up yesterday as the time we're recording this with a decisive 6-1 victory over the Philadelphia Flyers, another team that could be in the Doghouse podcast here in the next couple of weeks, right, boys? So I got a couple comments here from some nice Sabres fans from the previous game where they lost 4-3 in overtime to the Philadelphia Flyers. I believe without Hart in goal too, and they were up 3-0 going into the third, I believe. And they blew a 3-0 lead, loss in overtime. So we have a comment here from an angry fan on the Facebook from Buffalo Sabres from their loss of 4-3. I'm about to mail my Sabres jersey back to Terry and Kim, but the post office deemed hazardous material. Yikes.
Ooh, yikes. Hey,
Okay.
they could give it to their legends, though.
Yeah.
If they send some go-ahead ones, they might have the proper ones. Please send your legends jerseys so we can spell the names right.
Help a legend out.
I've got another long one here from a Facebook fan, Dan. This one's quite a long one, and it should be interesting to get you guys' opinion on this one. So it reads, I know this team sucks, and I could pretty much pick on any of them, but I just don't understand why. Why is Casey Middlestat on the ice in the final 2 minutes of regulation with 1-goal lead? Then he's out first shift in overtime. Thoughts?
Interesting. I mean, I understand why he's probably not happy to put Casey Middlestat on the ice, but who do we have left at center? Like
Sam Reinhart.
Dude, just load it up with penalty killers. Like Curtis Lazar, Toby Reeder, and then three defensemen.
We usually do start every overtime with Lazar to win the draw, but he's out now. So
Yeah, but was
right
he in the
now-
game?
I don't know for that one.
Lazar? No, Lazar's not. Right now, Middlestad's playing first line center. Reinhardt's playing second line center. So injury, and Eakin's just been brutal this year, so you're not going to put Eakin on.
Yeah,
This
you got
goes back to
Eakin,
too
you
many
got
wingers.
Middlestat. You got Fogarty, Stephen Fogarty, who's a bit of a washed-up player. Riley Sheehan, who we signed as a depth guy just in case of injury. Like, I mean, I'm frustrated with having Middlestat rush to play top 6 roles, but like, who else do you have, right?
I have another interesting comment here, and this one was a comment from a fan on the post-game live stream from the 4-3 loss. The most like comment on that guy was when the owners don't care about the team and they don't want to pay for quality, you get this. The Sabres are a tax write-off for them. They have the bills. That's all they care about. Now this ties back very well to our conversation earlier about the owners.
Yeah, I mean that they're not entirely wrong. They love the Bills. You know, you never see them coming out and saying they're gonna have to cut bill funding so they can fund their super yacht. Like, the Bills is their cash wagon. The Sabres, however, like, it's kind of coming out clearer and clearer that they really don't give a crap.
It kind of makes sense though when you compare like an NHL franchise to an NFL one. Even a small NFL one is probably in the top 10 for like NHL franchises in terms of net worth. They really can't compare and compete really. Like, think about ESPN's deal with the NHL. 400 million for half the TV rights. ESPN's deal for like, I think it's the next 10 years with the NFL is 100 billion.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
I also think if I was the owner of a fan base that likes to jump through tables, I'd be pretty scared cutting money from that team as well. I wouldn't want to be thrown through a table. It shows though that they don't care. When I know, going back to the comment before with Middlestat, if you look at what the owners did, that's why they're in this position. They signed all these wingers, don't have centers. I know injuries and COVID is affecting that a lot, so it's not just on them, but it doesn't look like they were prepared to have enough centers anyway. And that shows that, especially when they're super hands-on, that they either don't know what they're doing or they think they know what they're doing and they're just making all these mistakes, and who knows what's going on there. And it just shows that these, like, the Buffalo Sabres, how do these fans have any hope and trust their owners at all when they don't care, and when you're looking at their center depth as Casey Middlestat, Sam Reinhart, Ramis Asplund, and Cody Eakin? That shows they don't care. That shows that they don't care.
It definitely doesn't help that 4 of their centers at the start of the year are now out, with Eichel's out, Gergenson's out, Curtis Lazar's out, and we traded Stahl. So like, we're testing the depths of a center, you know. And I guess it's good at least that you get to see looks on guys to see, okay, who should I keep, who should I not keep. But when your number one center is Casey Middlestat or Riley Sheehan, it's just like,
Ooh.
At what point are we just running the circus on ice?
I've got a pretty. Oh, go ahead, JJ.
In overtime, I mean, I know this year you're only playing teams in your division, but if we look at some of the most elite overtime teams, who do they have? McDavid, Draisaitl. Well, like Crosby, like players like that. These are like legendary players who are out there, and maybe their thinking is, oh, Casey Middlestat's young, he's really fast, that's 3-on-3 hockey. But when you're throwing him out there to compete against like Crosby, Draisaitl, like Ovechkin even, they don't stand a chance. And that shows that the owners have no clue what they're doing and are making mistakes. And I feel for that man.
Really sad comment here from Reddit, the r/Sabres Reddit. This one's really sad. So this one reads, new fan at hockey and know very little about the sport. Just moved to upstate, so my wife and I decided to follow the Sabres. Feels bad. Just my thoughts. Why the fuck are Middlestat and Ristolainen still playing any minutes? I have a hard time imagining that they are both NHL players. And then there's a couple of replies here before we get into it. First reply reads, you definitely picked the wrong team to follow for hockey, but hey, you do you, man. And then the next one, you might want to find a less painful hobby, like home dentistry or something.
Ouch. See, that goes back to the fans have no faith. They have
Oh,
no faith in the owners or the team.
I will give
No
it
faith.
to the subreddit of the Sabres. I always pop in there just to see what people are saying. In previous years, it's a lot of sadness and anger because of the disappointment. But this year, they're just kind of having fun with it.
I mean, wasn't it one year there was an Iroquois curse put on the team?
Oh man, that
On
was
the
the year
Reddit?
Eichel was named captain. Yeah, that was like 4 years ago.
And I'm just saying, the town of Fernie in British Columbia had a curse put on them by the First Nations. The town burnt down twice. They invited the First Nations back to get rid of the curse, and the town hasn't burnt down since. So maybe Buffalo needs some magic there. Need to get rid of this
100%.
curse.
I think Buffalo Sabres fandom right now is kind of like they've reached a Joker mindset where like, haha, like the society and the state of the team is just such a joke. They're laughing at their own pain.
What else?
You know, they're just kind of having fun with it. If there's anyone left who even watches the games, like when we were in that 10-game winning streak, you know, the post-game threads would have like 500 to 800 comments on it. And then you look at the post-game threads now, and it's like 32.
I'm pretty sure that Instagram actually stopped posting the final score on the Buffalo Instagram. I was scrolling through and I was trying to find, or was it the Instagram or the Facebook, like where they post like, you know, just the final score from the game. I couldn't find it anymore. Until
That
they
one I'm,
wanted-
I'm puzzled by because they post the final score still on Facebook and Twitter,
Yeah, but not
where
Instagram.
arguably the fans are
Mhm.
more vicious than Instagram.
Totally. Yeah, I
A
noticed
lot
that.
of
I don't know.
teams don't post all their losses. I see it with a lot of teams. I used to follow every team on Instagram, which is way too much. But you'll just see it where a team loses and they just don't post anything. So maybe they were posting and then they went, oh, we should take a hint from the other teams that don't post all
Yeah.
the scores. But that is weird. Yeah, Facebook would be a more violent
Yeah,
place.
so. Yeah, Austin, you got another roast comment there, or?
Yeah, I don't know if they took down the comment or the guy himself took down the comment, but the comment was taken down. But on March 24th, the Sabres had a partnership with Jägermeister where they're offering a chance to win a virtual meet and greet with a custom Jägermeister Sabres jersey. And the top comment for a long time was, "There's not enough Jägermeister in the world that'll make this team watchable."
Ooh.
So whoever that guy commented that hero, there was another one we made a post about you can drop off fan cutouts, so you know put yourself in the crowd, and the top comment was, "I paid for a cutout of my recently deceased aunt. I want to pick it up. I don't want her to see this. It's disrespectful to her."
Oh my
this-
god.
This goes back to the very famous joke of I want the Buffalo Sabres to bury me when I pass away so that they can let me down one last time. Just the famous joke there.
Oh man.
I don't know. After
That is
watching
sad,
guys
though.
like Middlestat play, they might miss the burial hole putting me down.
Yeah, they might miss the net and then drop pass it to Zibanejad and Panarin and lose in overtime, which happened tonight.
Funny enough, though, that overtime play wasn't our bad players out there. That was Reinhardt and Olofsson. So
Nice. Well, I think they're all just playing bad at this point.
I have one more Twitter reply here, and it's actually kind of interesting because this guy said, you know, in response to, you know, one of their many losses, you know, has any professional team in any sport ever fired 2 head coaches in the same year, asking for a friend? Ridiculous, blowing a 3-0 lead versus a non-cup contender. And I did some looking onto this because it actually wasn't that long ago that an NHL team did this. They had 2 head coaches in the same year, and it was the 2011-2012 Los Angeles Kings. So they fired their main coach in early December, and then they had an interim coach come in, and it was like 20 days later, they fired the intern and hired Daryl Sutter, and they were 10th in the Western Conference with like a month to go in the season, month and a half, and then they came back to make the playoffs, and what did they do that season? They won the Stanley Cup. Isn't
so
that
what you're
crazy?
saying is, if we fire Don Granato, we're gonna win the Stanley Cup.
No, Daryl Sutter's already in Calgary. Sorry.
Well,
too
they'll
late.
probably
Looks like
fire
Calgary's
Daryl
gonna
Sutter
win.
pretty quickly too.
Yeah, true.
He'll bench Gaudreau for missing a practice, and then they'll fire him like they did to Hartley. So We only gotta wait a couple weeks till Sutter becomes free for us.
I think it's too late though.
Wonder if-
Like mathematically, aren't Buffalo eliminated already? Or no?
They got to be close.
Maybe not.
Gambling odds, yes. Mathematically,
Yeah,
no.
that makes sense. So
Put
in
your
theory,
bets in, guys. Put your bets in. The time is now.
imagine the
The
payouts.
moment you see,
Dude, a $5
Without
bet that
Eichel?
Buffalo wins the division right now. Imagine.
Without
$500,000.
Good luck. But you would win so much. Oh my gosh.
That'd be insane. So I've got a couple here now. Obviously, they won 6-1 versus Philadelphia Flyers. Just a couple, light-hearted ones just to kind of end us off. So a little less pain here. So this one I think is actually a good point because not a lot of people think about this. But this guy on Twitter responded to their post on their 6-1 win. I'm a Leafs fan, but I'm so happy for all of you, especially the social media person. Because no one ever thinks of them, right? It's not actually the management that sees all these hate comments that we're talking about. It's the intern, right? The intern that's getting paid $10 an hour. He's in college and he's posting these, and he's just probably crying behind the keyboard for 18 games in a row.
And then finally has his moment. Can post Sabres win. Final score.
There's another one here. Is it cringy that I actually teared up on the final minute? So much frustration. I just wanted one friggin' win. I think that kind of sums up Buffalo fans this season. It's pretty sad.
I mean, I'd be lying if I would say that I didn't jump up when Montour scored that second goal. Like, it felt like for a brief moment we won the Stanley Cup. And I was like, how much is a Brandon Montour jersey going to cost me?
I wonder what all the posts are like today after Dallin made that heroic save with the empty net, and then they go score to put it into OT with 3.6 seconds left and then lose. I wonder how the hope destroyed all those Buffalo fans today. I feel bad for them.
Well,
Honestly, like the biggest pain that we do every season is not that we lose and disappoint the fans, but we're losing and we're disappointing Rick Janneret, who just deserves to watch a winning team for once.
I would love to see him back commentating the playoffs one last time.
that would be sweet. Another May Day.
I'm looking at their Instagram and they didn't even post the final score today. They stopped.
They
stopped
lose,
posting 4 hours ago.
It's gone. Yeah.
They stopped posting
gosh.
mid-game, so I think they've had enough.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what are the odds, though, that Buffalo right now goes on yet another losing skid?
I mean, they're on one.
It's definitely possible.
One game.
Yeah, they technically are. Right back to normal.
To answer JJ's questions, 2 comments in the Sabres post-game thread that I found interesting. The number 1 comment is, going to take a hit to our playoff chances with that loss. And
It's pretty good.
And then the last one was, raise the almost won 2 games in a row banner. So they're still in good spirits.
I just remember that when the Sabres were up 3-0 against Philly, I remember Connor messaging this group chat, and he was like, "Oh my gosh," and I just replied, "Not yet, not yet," and
Dude,
I was right.
I
know
wanted
what
to
hope
send.
does.
I really wanted to send this message like, yes, they're finally going to do it after the second when it was 3-0. But I'm like, I can't. I got to wait at least 15 minutes left in the game. I feel like, okay, they've got this. God, that was heart-wrenching even for me.
So I think the one thing that the league needs to rectify right now is there's a meme that's going around in Canada that's perpetuated by the media, and it's called the Ottawa Senators Sicko. And that there was an old political comic about some guy looking through a window watching a family eat dinner saying, yes, ha ha ha, yes. And across his shirt it says sickos. And people started calling him the Ottawa Senator Sicko because the fans just kept getting more riled up every time they lost games. So to watch the Senators be called sickos, I think the Sabres are kind of contending for that spot now.
Didn't they put out like cutouts of him in the crowd, and then when they won a game, the coach quoted him? That's great. That's because Ottawa has hope. They have hope, and even when they lose, they have a more exciting play than they did years ago when they started to fall apart. So I think they have hope and believe. And they may not believe in their owner, but they believe in the team, and that's just what Buffalo doesn't have anymore with the drought.
Yeah, they're in early days.
I mean, they're in the early days, but they also got like that veteran level and the young guys, and they're all working hard to prove something.
Just
just
you
fun to
wait,
watch.
kids. Just you wait 7 more years, and then you'll look just like me, washed up, disenfranchised, tired.
7. You guys got to make the playoffs first. You're about to set the record for the longest playoff drought in NHL history if you don't make it next year.
Hey, this year's
We're all
not done
insane
yet.
records in the city, you know.
True, sorry.
So to wrap things up here, to end the podcast, I'm gonna open up with a bit of a question that we can look back on. Taylor Hall, does he stay? Does he go?
He goes.
He goes.
100%.
He
100%.
goes.
I think he stays.
No.
Just the
I'm
way
going with he stays.
just the way he's been playing, I don't think there's a team that's gonna be like, okay, yeah, this is what we need.
I'm going to
those
say
big
go.
fat lip of his loves Buffalo. He's staying.
How old is he?
I think he
How old is
stays.
he?
I'm going to say go.
He's 28.
I don't see him staying. Like, he's 28. He's in his prime right now. Like, he's not going to go to a team that clearly has no direction in the next 3 years.
Yeah, but what team has won the cap to sign him? Because even though he's had a bad year, he's still going to be like $4 or $5 million
I think
and that's a contender.
I think for sure
But-
he'll be farmed out as a rental this year, right? So he'll get an opportunity, maybe go to Toronto, maybe go to Colorado or something, right? I think for sure Buffalo want to get something for him, even if it's pennies on the dollar, and then they go from there. There's going to be some team with any team is better than Buffalo.
And if Buffalo retain 50% of his salary, which they might not have to do, but let's just say they have to, it's only $4 million for Taylor Hall. Teams are going to see what he's been in the past and go, I want a guy like that on our team. I think we can fix him, turn him around, and play really well, even if it's just for the playoffs. It would be, if they retain 50%, it's $4 million. It's not a big gamble. Maybe another team doesn't make Buffalo take 50%, but also from Buffalo's standpoint, he's saying, yeah, I might stay. Sometimes he's saying, oh, I'm listening to offers. It might be too risky, and having more wingers might not be the right play anyway. So I think you might as well trade him and maybe have a talk before going, hey, if you want to come back at the end of the year, we'll offer you a contract. We'll be interested. But for now, go try to win.
But at that point, like, what do you think you're gonna get for a return from Taylor Hall? Because I don't think at this point you'd probably retain, and you get maybe like an AHLer and like a 4th round pick.
Anything's
Nothing
better than
great.
no.
I think you're gonna get more than that. I think
Yeah, you're gonna get more than that.
more team. So many times we see teams trade for players or sign players who were good a couple years ago and then had a couple bad seasons or a bad season because they go, those teams failed him. We won't fail him. We will make him.
From what I've been
good.
reading from the inside sources, is the Sabres want a 1st round pick and a prospect and like a bottom to middle 6 guy. And while at the start of that offer, a lot of NHL executives came out and said they're being a bit optimistic if they think they're going to get a 1st. From what I've read, is while the Sabres aren't actively shopping them, apparently a bidding war is starting to form because Colorado wanted Hall, but now St. Louis is looking at him because they're struggling incredibly.
And Hoffman's
Right.
struggling.
So if they can really take advantage and get this betting war, I bet you they'll get a 1st for him. I bet you someone's going
I
to
think for
risk
sure
it.
he's going
Just-
before the deadline.
Just for
Let me
his
tell you this, James.
perspective, though, just from Taylor Hall's perspective, is he going to want to finish the rest of the year in Buffalo and then negotiate for a contract? He's not going to get very much money. If he
I
can
think they're
go,
going to try to sign him before they
if-
trade him.
if
No
he can
way.
do that, then he's trying to sign at a low. He's trying
had
to
a
sign where he's
terrible
been
year.
the worst,
He just
the
hasn't
worst of the
worked
worst.
out. Exactly, JJ.
If he
James-
goes to a really good team, gets 20 points in under 20 games, or gets even 10 points in a short amount of time, then teams could be like, that's the Taylor Hall we know, and he'll have that much more negotiating power, especially if he has a good playoff run.
Austin is having nothing of what we're saying
I'm
here.
having none of it.
He's having none
Let
of
me
this.
let me convince you in a different way. The most ideal situation for Buffalo this year is we trade Taylor Hall, we recoup some assets, we hopefully have a strong draft, and then we go forward free agency, whatever, right? What have we learned from this entire episode, time and time and time again, is that the Buffalo Sabres, without fail, rain or snow, holiday or not holiday, they will go out of their way to disappoint you. And
Holiday.
You're goddamn right they're going to sign Hall, and they're going to sign him for too much money, and they're going to sign him for too long, and he's going to retire a Buffalo Sabre.
They're not going to take that risk.
That is my
they
final
can't.
say.
They should sign him for the same length as Skinner, same contract. Why not?
9 times
Why not?
8, and we'll just have Skinner, Eichel, and Hall play.
Defense,
telling you.
0. 0 defense.
Hell, he knew it was going to happen. And
That
we
line
can,
would score 700 goals in the NHL in 1 year, guaranteed.
We'll probably have a show for the trade deadline, and we can recoup and we can see who was in the doghouse on the right prediction on the Hall and who got the dog.
I just don't see a scenario where he stays, because they can get anything's better than him walking, right? The potential for him walking like he did at Arizona, and I just don't think they'll be willing to take the risk like they did on Skinner. Because he hasn't had a great year, they can't risk another Skinner, so he's got to go.
And what did he do in Arizona? He went to the playoffs and they beat Nashville. That's why he got $8 million this year.
Exactly. So we sign him cheap, and then next year we beat Nashville in the playoffs in the Stanley Cup final.
That's Arizona's job, to beat Nashville. It's the only team that can beat.
So going into our final little question of the show, how we're going to end the show off today, we're going to pick 2 players or people in the organization. One is, who are we going to put in the doghouse? Who do we think has contributed the most to the Buffalo Sabres' failures this year? Who has been the most garbage? Who has really let the team down? And then also, which dog are we going to give a bone to? Who, despite this terrible season, has really, been hardworking, been, hungry for that bone and given it all to. So, Jim, you want to start with yours?
Yep, sure. So who am I gonna put in the doghouse? You might not like this, but I'm putting Jack Eichel in the doghouse. I think, I even
see that.
he may have been out, injured, for a lot of this season, but you know what? At the end of the day, he's the captain, and he is. As a captain of this organization, you are literally what every other player should revolve around. And I just don't think he's done a good enough job. And clearly he hasn't done a good enough job to motivate his team. And I think you can still motivate your team even when you're injured. You're sitting from the sidelines. You should be getting everyone fired up. And personally, I don't know if he has it in him. But if he does,
James, he has led the way. He got injured and the rest of the team got injured.
He is literally.
How is that not leadership?
Leadership 101.
You just proved my point. He's literally led the team to sadness. He's the core of the sadness. And so with that, I will nominate Jack Eichel to make him the bottom of the doghouse, and for the give a dog a bone. I think this might be a common theme, but we'll see. But I give him the bone to Ullmark. He's been outstanding. He's been literally there for every single win except one of what you guys were saying earlier. He's been outstanding. I have him in fantasy. He's been doing great for save percentage, not so great for the wins, but he's really held it out, and he's been the clear MVP of the Buffalo Sabres this season. And I guess we're heading off to JJ. What do you think?
Doghouse, I'm gonna go with the ownership. I mean, the players. I know the players have to perform at times, and I know Jack Eichel only has 2 goals this year, and they're not performing. But if you don't have scouts, the fans don't trust you, maybe even the players don't trust you to build a good team, it's going to reflect on the ice. And it clearly has this year. And I think they need to realize what they did with the Bills has worked out, and that they need to let go of their stranglehold and maybe pass it on to someone who has more experience in hockey, who can help these players out more. The dog I'm going to give a bone is definitely Ullmark as well. I mean, to have a .920 save percentage on the worst team in the league that's only won 7 games, and you've won 6 of them, says a lot. He's the only goalie on the team who doesn't have a sunburn on the back of his neck from the goal light. So have to give him some respect there. Hopefully he either gets a big payday or goes somewhere else and can win. And I'm going to pass it off to Connor then.
Awesome. I think in terms, just to add a little bit onto the Jack Eichel, because I saw Austin shaking his head. Eichel has a shooting percentage below 3%. That's That's pretty bad.
Connor,
2.8%.
you break a rib and get some abdominal surgery. Let's see how many goals you score. Okay. Put yourself in his skates. Break a rib and then put a puck in the net.
I'm also a little sour because I took him at 6 overall in fantasy, so my sourness comes there. But I guess in terms of like who I'd put in the doghouse, honestly, it's got to be their coaching. Just their 5-on-5 play and the way to inspire their players has not been there. Like, their systems on the power play and penalty kill have been pretty good. I'll give them that. But just with how they play, like how they coach their players, get them motivated. Like, even during like game 15, game 14, you could just see like the heart and soul players on the Sabres just lacking the effort. And that just all comes down to getting your coach motivating the players. They're the one who's supposed to be, talking to the GMs and the players. They're the ones who really should drive the team. But for my give a dog a bone, this is going to be a weird one. I'm going to give it to Jeff Skinner.
Oof.
He hasn't been getting the minutes. Arguably, he doesn't deserve the minutes. You got to earn your minutes. But in the last little while, even though he has not been performing well, even during that peak, like games 13, 14, 15, he was probably the only Sabre out there that was constantly digging hard and working his ass off. And even though he's not producing, that kind of mentality at least I can appreciate. So I'll give Skinner a bone.
Did he give you some of his money? Like, he has 4 points.
Skinner always hustles. Skinner puts so much heart.
4 points, but like he is at least trying, and that was way more than I can say about guys like Ristolainen and Dahlin.
Every game Skinner has been playing against 2 teams. He has to play against the other team and then Team Ralph Kruger trying to stop him from winning. And he still comes to games happy. And, you got to give Skinner a bit of props because he had the 2 funniest plays in the past 2 games. Today he had a breakaway without a stick and tried to soccer kick it in the net. And last game, puck deflected into the crowd and no one saw where it went. And you just see Skinner skating because it landed in his pants. And then he comes around the net and pops it out of his pants and tries to score. So he's just hilarious. I just love the guy.
That's pretty funny. Hopefully he can turn it around then.
Austin, who you got?
So this might come as a bit of a shock. If anyone here is a Melody Martin fan, though, maybe not so much. The player that I am putting in the doghouse, and I am putting a player, is Eric Stahl. Eric Stahl was brought in to be a veteran presence, to be, second-line center. And I remember when we traded for him, there was like a rumor going around that he might not even play, he might just retire. But he eventually did show up to Buffalo. But honestly, I can't tell the difference, We have a lot of guys on this team who just, they hustle every game, but they're just not good enough for the NHL. Eakin, Fogarty, Asplund, right? They try their hardest, they just don't have the skill. But, Eric Stahl is just so lazy. So many games that I can just see he cashed out. And I think a lot of fans are misinterpreting, Sabre fans are saying, good luck Montreal, this guy sucks. And we're not saying it because he had a bad year. A lot of players had a bad year, but he didn't look like he cared. And, when you get brought in to be a leader, you got to, you can't motivate a team when the leader presence is giving up on the ice. When you got rookies going out there giving more effort than him. His last game here, he gave away 2 giveaways in his own end that led to 2 goals and didn't even try to fix it. He just threw it and then just stood up and dropped his stick, did the Tyler Seguin. So Eric Stahl is for sure my dog in the doghouse.
That's a good point. Yep.
Biggest mistake of his life was not retiring.
Honestly, Jade, you watch him play, he looked like he retired anyway, so there's no difference. He's just getting paid this time. The player that I would give a dog bone to, I was thinking of Montour because he always shows up chippy, but one underrated player that I watch every game is Jacob Bryson. He is a rookie this year. He is 23 years old. Sabres have one of the worst scouts, one of the worst drafting. We've been over this. He's a 4th-round pick in 2017. Played for Providence. In the AHL in his first year in pro hockey, at 27 points in 61 games. And everyone's like, okay, like this kid's really good. He's only 5'9", he's small. And there's talks like, maybe a couple of years down the road, he'll be a great prospect for the Sabres. But this year he gets called up because of injury, and this kid is NHL ready. He's so smart. He's such a great puck-moving defenseman. just does all the little things right. He reminds me a lot of, Ryan Ellis. And to come into such a, lose-lose situation and play so well and give your heart out, I got to give it to Jacob Bryson. He's one of those guys that when you watch him play, you're like, okay, there's a bright future here. We have a chance to be good. We have a chance to turn this around if we can just build around guys like these.
Touche.
So I think that's how we're going to cap off the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the first episode. And then we'll just fade out of here on one last question. Buffalo wings, do you guys eat them with ranch or blue cheese?
Blue cheese.
This
Best-
isn't an
best
opinion
flavor I've
either.
had.
There is a right answer to this question.
Buffalo blue cheese. I'd never had them. Austin forced me to try it, and I would order them every time we went out. Buffalo blue cheese until that place closed down due to COVID. It was so good.
I've never had blue cheese, to be honest, so I'm missing out, hey?
Yeah.
Well,
I'd
it's
like to
close
change
now,
my
so I think you've missed the train.
Man, I'm not a big cheese guy, so I'll go ranch all the way, and I know I'm wrong. Bring
I
all
would
the
like
hate.
to change my answer to
Cheese
James
hater.
and Connor in the Doghouse for terrible wing choices. Just garbage.
What are you talking about, man? Ranch is a classic for wings.
The only people like
Even-
ranch are Flyers fans, and look how they turned out. Blue cheese
Brave.
gang.
Brave. Brave comments.